The prince pretended to be a beggar looking for a kind wife. Lucas had spent his entire life in the UK. His upbringing had been shaped by the bustling streets of London, the quiet countryside, and the strict routines of private schooling. His father, the king of Obeyed Kingdom, ruled with wisdom and strength, but now age was catching up with him. The weight of the crown, once carried with ease, had grown heavier over the years. The king knew his time was running out and that he needed to prepare his only son to inherit the throne. Lucas had always known this day would come, but when the summons arrived, it still came as a shock. He was to return to Obeyed Kingdom, a land he had only heard about in stories told by his father and the royal advisors. Stories of a grand palace with golden spires, a culture rich with traditions, and people known for their kindness and loyalty. Yet, Lucas felt like a stranger to this land. Despite his royal lineage, he had never lived there, never walked its streets, or understood its customs. The weight of expectation pressed down on him. The day he boarded the royal jet bound for Obeyed Kingdom, Lucas's emotions were a whirlwind of excitement and trepidation. He had prepared for this moment academically, studying diplomacy, governance, and history. Yet, he felt unprepared to step into a world that demanded not just knowledge but heart and connection. Would the people accept him as their future king? Would he measure up to the legacy of his father? When the plane touched down on the sunlit tarmac of Obeyed's royal airport, Lucas was greeted with a spectacle he could hardly comprehend. Crowds of people lined the streets, waving flags and cheering for the prince they had never met. It was overwhelming, but their warmth touched him deeply. As his motorcade made its way to the palace, he took in the sights of the capital city, its vibrant markets, ornate temples, and lush gardens. The kingdom was even more beautiful than he had imagined. At the palace gates, the king awaited him. Despite his frailty, the king stood tall, his eyes shining with pride and hope. "Lucas, my son," he said, pulling him into an embrace. "Welcome home." But home felt like an unfamiliar concept to Lucas. As he entered the palace, its grandeur and opulence only heightened his sense of alienation. Every corner was adorned with intricate carvings, gilded mirrors, and tapestries depicting the kingdom's rich history. Servants bowed as he passed, their eyes filled with awe. Lucas couldn't help but wonder if he could ever live up to their expectations. Later that evening, his father summoned him to the council chamber. The room was filled with the kingdom's most powerful leaders, known as the kingmakers. They were the stewards of tradition and wielded immense influence. It was their duty to guide the transition of power and ensure the next ruler was ready to lead. "Lucas," the king began, his voice steadied despite his frailty, "you must understand the weight of this crown. It is not just a symbol of power but of responsibility. The kingmakers have agreed to support your ascension, but there is one condition you must fulfill before you can be crowned." Lucas leaned forward, his heart pounding. "What is it, father?" The eldest kingmaker, a man with a stern demeanor and a voice that carried authority, spoke. "Before you can take the throne, you must find a wife. A queen is not just a partner but a symbol of unity and strength for our people. Without her, your reign cannot begin." Lucas nodded, though his mind raced with questions. He had never been in love, never even had the time to consider romance. His life had been a whirlwind of studies and preparation, with no room for matters of the heart. Now, he was being asked to choose someone to stand beside him for the rest of his life. The kingmakers wasted no time in presenting him with options. Over the following weeks, Lucas was introduced to countless women from noble families. They were beautiful, charming, and eager to impress. Yet, as he conversed with them, he couldn't shake the feeling that their interest was more in his title than in him as a person. Their smiles, though radiant, felt rehearsed. Their words, though flattering, lacked sincerity. One evening, after yet another formal dinner filled with introductions and polite conversations, Lucas confided in his father. "Father, how can I choose a queen when I don't feel any connection with these women? They're all wonderful, but it feels hollow. The king placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. Finding the right person takes time, Lucas. Trust your instincts. The crown is important, but so is your happiness. A true queen will stand by you not because of your title, but because of who you are. Those words stayed with Lucas as he navigated the complexities of royal life. He resolved to keep searching, hoping that somewhere in the vast kingdom, he would find someone who saw him not as a prince, but as a man. Chapter 2, Agatha's Arrival. The palace buzzed with excitement when news spread that Lucas would meet Agatha, the daughter of the most powerful kingmaker. Her beauty was legendary, her intelligence unmatched, and her confidence unshakable. Many believed she was the perfect match for the prince. Lucas couldn't deny his curiosity. When Agatha arrived, she was everything the rumors had described and more. Tall and graceful, with long black hair that shimmered in the sunlight, she carried herself with an air of authority that commanded attention. Their first meeting was orchestrated to perfection. They dined in the palace gardens under a canopy of stars. The soft glow of lanterns illuminated Agatha's striking features as she spoke of her visions for the kingdom. Lucas found himself drawn to her charisma, her eloquence, and her undeniable charm. For the first time, he felt a flicker of hope that he might have found someone who could be his equal. They began spending more time together, going on lavish dates and attending public events. The kingdom's people were thrilled, and the kingmakers were pleased. But as Lucas got to know Agatha better, he began to notice cracks in her perfect facade. There was a coldness in her eyes that unsettled him, a subtle arrogance in her words that hinted at her sense of entitlement. She spoke often of her family's wealth and influence, as though it were her greatest asset. One day, Lucas observed an incident that left him deeply troubled. While dining with Agatha at a restaurant, he noticed her interaction with the staff. She was curt, dismissive, and impatient. When a young waiter accidentally spilled a glass of water near their table, Agatha's response was swift and cruel. She berated the waiter loudly, drawing the attention of the entire restaurant. Lucas's heart sank. This was not the behavior he had hoped for in a future queen. He began to question whether Agatha's outward charm was merely a mask hiding a lack of empathy and compassion. Chapter 3, A Hidden Truth. Determined to uncover Agatha's true nature, Lucas devised a plan. Disguising himself as a beggar, he would observe her interactions with others without the influence of his royal status. He shared his plan with no one, not even his father. To the court and the kingdom, it appeared as though Lucas had returned to the UK for urgent matters. For weeks, Lucas roamed the streets of Obeid Kingdom in his disguise. He saw the city from a new perspective, witnessing both its beauty and its struggles. He frequented places Agatha was known to visit, watching her from the shadows. What he saw confirmed his worst fears. Agatha treated those she deemed beneath her with disdain. Her kindness was reserved for those who could further her ambitions. One fateful day, disguised as a beggar, Lucas approached Agatha outside a boutique, asking for a drink of water. Her response was a slap that left him stunned and humiliated. As he stumbled backward, hitting his head on the pavement, he saw the shocked face of a young woman who had been with Agatha. Sophia, her name was. Unlike Agatha, she rushed to his aid, her concern genuine and her touch gentle. Sophia's kindness was a stark contrast to Agatha's cruelty. As she helped Lucas to his feet and insisted on taking him to a hospital, Lucas felt a spark of hope. Perhaps not all was lost. Perhaps there were still people who saw the value of a person's heart rather than their status. But Lucas's journey was far from over. As he recovered from his injuries and reflected on what he had learned, he realized that his search for a queen was about more than fulfilling a royal duty. It was about finding someone who could help him become the king he aspired to be, someone who would lead with compassion, integrity. Chapter 11, The Memory Fracture. Lucas stared at Agatha, his eyes narrowing as the flickering shards of a forgotten past teased his consciousness. There was something about her presence, a sharp, cold blade cutting through the fog in his mind. Yet, the memory refused to take full form. I don't remember, he said finally, his voice heavy with confusion. But why does it feel like I should? Agatha stepped closer, her gaze softening in a calculated manner. Lucas, she began, her voice trembling ever so slightly, we were close once. You and I had something special. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. I've made mistakes, but I've spent so much time reflecting, and I came here to set things right. Sophia stepped forward, her expression taut with anger. Set things right? Agatha, you've had years to apologize. Why now? Why, after you destroyed his life, do you suddenly want to make amends? I didn't destroy his life, Agatha snapped, but her voice lacked the conviction it once held. He was hurt, yes, but that was never my intention. I was reckless, I admit that, but I'm here now because I care. Sophia's hands balled into fists. You care? You left him to die, Agatha. You humiliated him, pushed him, and walked away while he bled on the ground. If it weren't for me, Lucas would be dead. You care about yourself, not him. Lucas looked between the two women, his head pounding. Agatha's words sounded hollow, but there was a small part of him that clung to the possibility that she might be telling the truth. His amnesia felt like a chain, binding him to the uncertainty of who he was before. He wanted answers, needed them, but he didn't know whom to trust. Stop, Lucas said finally, his voice cutting through the tension. I can't do this right now. I don't remember enough to decide who's lying or telling the truth. I need time to think. Sophia's face softened as she looked at him, her anger fading into concern. Lucas, you don't have to trust her. Just trust what you've seen with your own eyes since the accident. I'll be here for you, no matter what. Agatha stepped closer, her tone pleading. And I'll prove myself to you. Please, Lucas. Give me a chance. Without another word, Lucas turned and walked into his bedroom, shutting the door behind him. He leaned against it, his heart pounding. He hated the chaos that had erupted in his life. The truth felt like sand slipping through his fingers, and he was desperate to piece it together. Chapter 12, A Silent Observer. The following days were tense. Agatha remained in the city, claiming she wanted to stay close to Lucas to prove her sincerity. Sophia, though reluctant, didn't leave Lucas's side either, keeping a watchful eye on Agatha's every move. Lucas found himself torn between the two women. Sophia's kindness and steady presence had been his anchor since the accident, but Agatha's arrival had stirred something within him, a need to uncover the truth about his past. One evening, Lucas decided to take matters into his own hands. While Sophia was out running errands, and Agatha was conveniently visiting a friend, Lucas searched through the belongings Sophia had saved for him after the accident. Most of his possessions were new, purchased by Sophia to help him start fresh, but tucked away in a drawer was a box he hadn't noticed before. Inside, he found a journal, his journal. The cover was scuffed, and some of the pages were stained, but it was unmistakably his handwriting. He flipped through it, his heart racing as fragmented memories began to surface. One entry caught his eye. Agatha is everything a prince could want in a queen, beautiful, poised, and influential. But something about her feels hollow. She doesn't look at me, Lucas, the man. She looks at the prince, the crown. I can't shake the feeling that she loves the power more than she could ever love me. Lucas's breath hitched as he read the words. The memory of his suspicions about Agatha was now clear. He had doubted her long before the accident. Further entries detailed his decision to disguise himself as a beggar to observe her true character. His handwriting grew shakier as the entries progressed, as if he had been writing in haste. She humiliated me today. Threw water on me like I was trash. I saw the truth in her eyes, the disdain, the cruelty. I can't believe I ever considered her as a queen. She's not the person I thought she was. I need to find a way to end this charade without bringing shame to my family. The final entry stopped him cold. Sophia. She's not like the others. There's a kindness in her that feels genuine. I've never met anyone like her. She treats me like a person, not a title. Could it be? Lucas closed the journal, his hands trembling. The truth was there, written by his own hand. He had doubted Agatha from the beginning, and Sophia had been the one person who had shown him compassion and care. He sat in silence for a long time, his thoughts swirling. The memories were still fragmented, but the journal had given him clarity. He needed to confront Agatha, and thank Sophia. Chapter 13, The Confrontation. The next morning, Lucas invited Agatha to meet him at a quiet cafe in the city. She arrived promptly, dressed impeccably as always, her demeanor calm and confident. "Lucas," she greeted, smiling warmly. "I'm glad you called." Lucas nodded, gesturing for her to sit. "I've been thinking a lot since you showed up," he began, his tone neutral. "About the past, about you, and about what I want for my future." Agatha leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with hope. "And? What have you decided?" Lucas reached into his bag and pulled out the journal, placing it on the table between them. "I found this," he said. "It's my journal from before the accident. It reminded me of who I was, and who you were." Agatha's smile faltered as she stared at the journal. "Lucas, You lied to me," he said, his voice steady but firm. "You tried to twist the narrative, but the truth is here, in my own words. You humiliated me, treated me like nothing, and left me to die. And now you expect me to believe that you've changed?" Agatha's composure cracked for the first time. Her hands clenched into fists as she struggled to respond. "I made mistakes," she said finally, her voice shaking. "But I've changed, Lucas. I swear I have." Lucas shook his head. "People don't change overnight, Agatha. Your actions spoke louder than any words ever could. I can't trust you, and I certainly can't forgive you." Agatha's face twisted with anger. "You're making a mistake," she hissed. "Do you really think Sophia is better than me? She's nothing compared to what I can offer you." Lucas stood, his expression calm but resolute. "This isn't about what anyone can offer me. It's about what's real. And you, Agatha, you're not." Without another word, he walked away, leaving Agatha sitting alone, her mask of poise shattered. Chapter 14, Finding His Path. Lucas walked briskly down the cobbled street, the cafe fading into the distance behind him. The morning air was crisp, biting at his skin, but the weight in his chest felt lighter. For the first time since the accident, he felt as though he'd taken control of his story. Agatha's grasp on him, on his past, was finally broken. He reached Sophia's modest apartment just as the sun dipped below the rooftops, casting a golden glow over the city. He stood at her door for a moment, breathing deeply, trying to steady himself. When he finally knocked, Sophia opened it almost immediately, her expression softening when she saw him. "Lucas," she said, stepping aside to let him in. "How did it go?" Lucas entered and turned to face her, a small, genuine smile tugging at his lips. "It's over," he said simply. "I confronted her. She can't manipulate me anymore." Sophia exhaled, relief evident in her eyes. "I'm glad. You deserve peace, Lucas." He took a step closer to her, his gaze steady. "You've been my peace, Sophia. From the moment I woke up in that hospital bed, you've been there. I was lost, completely broken, and you helped me piece myself back together." Sophia flushed, her eyes dropping to the floor. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Lucas said firmly, tilting her chin up so she would look at him. Not anyone would have done what you did. You didn't just take care of me, you reminded me what it's like to be cared for, without expectation, without strings attached. You reminded me what it's like to feel human. Sophia blinked, her breath catching. Lucas, I need you to hear this, he interrupted gently. Because I don't know if I've said it enough, or if I've said it at all. Thank you. For everything. For staying by my side when you had every reason to walk away. Sophia's lips trembled, and she laughed softly, though her eyes were misty. You don't have to thank me, Lucas. I stayed because I care about you. Because she stopped herself, biting her lip. Because you what? He asked, his voice low. Because I love you, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I know it's complicated, and I don't want you to feel pressured, but it's the truth. I've loved you for a long time. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken emotions. Then, slowly, Lucas reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. I don't remember everything about who I used to be, he said quietly. But I know who I am now. And I know that the man I've become wouldn't have survived without you. I care about you too, Sophia. More than I can put into words. Sophia's eyes widened, hope flickering across her face. You mean that? Lucas nodded, a soft smile tugging at his lips. I do. And I don't want to waste any more time being afraid of what's next. I want to figure it out, with you. Sophia laughed, a sound so pure and full of joy that it made Lucas's chest ache. She stepped closer, wrapping her arms around him in a tight hug. He held her just as tightly, burying his face in her hair and breathing her in. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lucas felt truly whole. For more folktale videos like this, drop a comment and don't forget to like and click the subscribe button.